Hello everyone, my name is TaxOwlbear and welcome back to the Lovecraftian video game Retrospective, and welcome to Alone in the Dark. Alone in the Dark is probably one of the most well-known Lovecraftian games, mainly because it spawned an entire series that lasts until this day, even though it has declined in quality a little bit. So in Alone in the Dark you take the role of Emily Hartwood, niece of the late Jeremy Hartwood, or private investigator Edward Carnby, and you have to investigate the suicide of Jeremy, and you do that in his spooky Louisiana mansion, which you can see right now. And needless to say, there's more behind the suicide, and you can't just walk out of the mansion's front door. Well, actually you can, but that would just get you killed, so you have to solve the mystery behind this mansion. Alone in the Dark has hand-drawn 2D backgrounds and 3D characters. They look extremely blocky and low-res these days, but they were actually quite advanced at the time, and still look quite charming in my opinion. And the game profits from not being fully 3D, because that makes the whole backgrounds and the majority of the mansion look way better. Controls are quite simple. You move characters with your arrow keys. The camera is fixed, which can be a little bit irritating at the beginning, but it isn't really too bad once you get used to it. And you basically just pick up items, you solve puzzles with said items, and you occasionally also fight enemies. The fighting is not the best fighting system ever, but there are comparably few enemies. You do get a couple of weapons later on, and overall it's really not too bad. And the puzzles aren't too hard, so overall this game is not the most difficult game, which is probably good, because since the controls are a little bit dated, this game being very... just look at his face. This game being very hard would probably lower its quality quite a bit. And if you think this sounds a little bit similar to Biohazard, also known as Resident Evil, you're pretty right. So Alone in the Dark is one of the games that defines the survival horror genre, and Resident Evil lifts a lot of things directly from Alone in the Dark, such as the fixed camera angles, the characters in the 2D environment, the very poor gun controls, and those puzzles and the general setup of a mansion you can't just leave. Overall, this game is pretty good. It has aged quite well, considering that by modern standards the controls are very dated, and luckily it doesn't have too much combat, unlike Alone in the Dark 2, which is pretty much the same game gameplay wise, but has way more combat, and in a game that's not really designed for that. So as you can see me struggling moving this chassis a little bit because I had to get used to the controls, but it's really not too bad, and most of the time you don't really have time puzzles. You can just take your time, you don't really have to watch out, and if the camera works a little bit against you because it suddenly switches the angle, it's really not too bad. So I definitely recommend this game. It does have a very good atmosphere and very good sound effects. The soundtrack is pretty solid too, but I would actually recommend to turn the music off, because with the music turned off, this game becomes a lot more scary. And that's basically what you want. I mean, this is a horror game, so you want to be scared. So there's a couple of more things to say. You have an unlimited inventory and you can save whenever you want, so this makes this game so much more convenient, so you don't really need to watch out when you save, and unless of course you're in combat, then that might be a bad idea to save, and you don't really need to watch out what items you're carrying around. You can carry everything you find in the mansion, and the game is quite generous with regard to where you find items, so you don't need to be pixel perfect, you just need to push the right button when you're in the general vicinity of the item, and then you basically just take it. So as you can see, occasionally it looks quite goofy what Edward is doing here, but yeah, it has its charm. And to be honest, I think Edward is one of the creepiest creatures in the game, because I mean, just look at his face, his never blinking eyes. It is kind of scary. I didn't want to meet Edward in like in a Dark Alley way. So here I'm fighting one of the zombies. Yeah, this game is a little bit voodoo themed. It mixes Lovecraft with voodoo, but it works quite well. This fighting looks a little bit goofy, but it's really not too bad, and it's surprisingly effective, considering how bad other adventure games do fighting. It's really not too bad. This is one of the early spooky scenes where the creature bursts through the window and you have to fight it off. This was also copied by Resident Evil, which has that one scene where you go through a hallway and then those Cerberus dogs burst through the windows and try to rip you apart. But I don't think I want to like really show you anything more of the mansion and spoil anything of the story, because this game is recommended. It's still available today, and I think you should play it yourself and see what's behind the mansion and what's behind what this game has to offer. So yeah, thanks for watching. I definitely recommend this game, and I shall see you next time. Take care and goodbye.